When we think of musicians dying young, we think of overdoses or accidents. We don't think of execution. We don't think of cartel death squads hunting artists after concerts. But in Mexico, over 50 musicians have been murdered in drug-related violence since 1992. Their bodies found on roadsides, in wells, in hospital beds. Some sang narco corridos glorifying drug lords. Others sang only love songs. It made no difference. We are investigating the 10 most horrifying real cases of Mexican musicians executed by cartels. These are not dramatizations. These are documented murders. Subscribe now. These stories must be told. Number 1, Chalino Sanchez. This is the case that started it all. The murder that became legend, the death that defined an entire genre. The execution that proved no musician in Mexico was safe. Rosalino Chalino Sanchez Felix was not just a singer. He was the godfather of the modern narco corrido, the man who transformed Mexican folk ballads into unflinching chronicles of cartel life. His murder on May 16, 1992, remains unsolved to this day, but its impact on Mexican music and on the deadly relationship between artists and cartels cannot be overstated. Chalino was born on August 30, 1960, in Las Flechas, a small ranch near El Guayabo in rural Sinaloa. His childhood was marked by tragedy and violence that would later fuel his music. His father died when he was just 6 years old. At 15, Chalino shot and killed a man who had raped his sister 2 years earlier. Fleeing Mexican authorities, he crossed into the United States in 1975. Working on farms across the Pacific Northwest before settling in Inglewood, California in 1983. In Los Angeles, Chalino worked whatever jobs he could find, washing dishes, selling cars, and by some accounts, dealing small quantities of marijuana and cocaine. But music was always his passion. In 1984, tragedy struck again when his brother Armando was murdered in a hotel in Tijuana. This devastating loss inspired Chalino to compose his first corrido, Recordando a Armando Sanchez. It was the beginning of a career that would revolutionize Mexican music. What made Chalino different was authenticity. He didn't romanticize the drug world from a distance. He had lived it. His songs told stories of murder, organized crime, drug trafficking, and the harsh realities of northern Mexico with unflinching honesty. His voice was rough, untrained, deliberately off-key in a way that felt more real than polished. Young Hispanics on both sides of the border heard their own experiences reflected in his music. By the early 1990s, despite minimal radio play, Chalino had become an underground phenomenon. Then came January 25, 1992, 4 months before his death, and an incident that transformed Chalino from regional star to national legend. During a performance in Coachella, California, a man named Eduardo Gallegos approached the stage and opened fire, hitting Chalino twice in the chest near his armpit. But Chalino didn't run. He pulled his own pistol and returned fire. In the chaos, approximately 15 shots were fired. Chalino survived. Gallegos was wrestled to the ground and shot in the mouth with his own weapon. A bystander, 20-year-old Claudio Rene Carranza, was killed by one of Chalino's bullets. The shooting should have been a warning. Instead, it made Chalino a legend. His sales and radio airplay increased dramatically after the incident. His next Los Angeles performance sold out 6 hours before he was scheduled to appear. Chalino had proven he was the real thing. A man who would shoot back, a survivor in a world where survival was never guaranteed. 4 months later, on May 15, 1992, Chalino returned to his homeland to perform at a concert in Culiacan, the capital city of Sinaloa, and the heart of Mexico's most powerful drug cartel. Accounts of what happened that night vary, but one detail is consistent across all reports. During the performance, someone approached Chalino and handed him a note. Witnesses say his demeanor changed after reading it. Some believe it was a death threat. Others speculate it was a summons he couldn't refuse. Whatever the note contained, Chalino finished his set. After the concert, In the early morning hours of May 16th, Chalino was driving away from the venue when his car was stopped by armed men claiming to be state judicial police. He was taken from his vehicle. His two companions were left behind. Hours later, farm workers discovered Chalino's body near an irrigation canal on the outskirts of Los Mochis, approximately 200 kilometers north of Culiacan. He had been shot twice in the back of the head, the classic cartel execution style. He was 31 years old. He had been married for 8 years to Maricela Vallejos. He left behind 2 children, Adan, who would later become a singer himself before dying in a 2004 car accident, and Cynthia. The investigation into Chalino's murder went nowhere. No arrests were ever made. No suspects were publicly named. The case remains officially unsolved more than 3 decades later. Theories abound. Some believe he was killed by the Arellano Felix Cartel because his songs favored their rivals. Others suggest he possessed information he shouldn't have had. Still others believe it was personal. Revenge for something in his past, perhaps connected to the man he killed as a teenager, perhaps to enemies made during his years in the Los Angeles underworld. What is certain is the impact of his death. In the years following his murder, Chalino's popularity exploded. His widow reported knowing of at least 150 corridos written in tribute to her husband. His vocal tracks were used to create new songs. Imitators emerged across Mexico and the United States. Artists like Snoop Dogg have cited him as an influence. In 2019, a short film about his life premiered at the Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival. In 2022, an 8-part podcast called Idolo: The Ballad of Chalino Sanchez explored the circumstances of his murder. A biographical film starring David Castaneda is currently in production, but Chalino's greatest legacy may be the deadliest. He proved that narco-corrido singers could achieve fame, fortune, and cultural immortality. In the 3 decades since his death, dozens of Mexican musicians have followed his path, and many have met similar fates. Every artist murdered in the cases that follow owes something to Chalino Sanchez, the man who showed Mexico that singing about cartels could make you a star, even as it put a target on your back. The question Chalino's death raises is one that haunts Mexican music to this day. Can an artist document cartel violence without becoming a victim of it? Is there any way to sing about this world honestly and survive? For Chalino Sanchez, the answer was no. He performed in Culiacan. He received a note. By morning, he was dead. If this case, the founding murder of narco-corrido history, has affected you, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. But Chalino was only the beginning. The artists who followed him would die in ways even more brutal, more calculated, and more terrifying. Number 2, Valentín Elizalde. 14 years after Chalino's death, the cartel murder of Mexican musicians had become almost routine. But the execution of Valentín Elizalde on November 25, 2006, shocked even a country growing numb to violence. Known as El Gallo de Oro, the Golden Rooster, Elizalde was one of the biggest stars in regional Mexican music, a Grammy-nominated artist with massive crossover appeal. His murder would be captured in a level of brutality that signaled a new era in cartel violence against artists. Valentín Elizalde Valencia was born on February 1, 1979, in Gitonhueca, a village near Echojua in the Mexican state of Sonora. Music was in his blood. His father, Everardo Lalo Elizalde, nicknamed El Gallo, was also a singer. Valentín moved between Guadalajara, Jalisco, and Guasave, Sinaloa, before launching his own career. His nickname, El Gallo de Oro, was inherited and elevated. Where his father was simply the Rooster, Valentín became the Golden Rooster. His biggest hits, Vete Ya, Ebrio de Amor, and Soy Así, made him a star across Mexico and the United States. But Valentín also performed narco-corridos, including songs that eulogized powerful drug lords. He wrote lyrics honoring Vicente Carrillo Fuentes and, most significantly, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. the leader of the Sinaloa Cartel. In the context of Mexico's drug war, these songs were more than entertainment. They were political statements, declarations of allegiance that rival cartels interpreted as acts of disrespect. In 2006, the Gulf Cartel and its military arm, Los Zetas, a paramilitary force originally composed of deserters from Mexican special forces, controlled Tamaulipas and were locked in a brutal territorial war with the Sinaloa Cartel. When Valentín Elizalde accepted a booking to perform at the Expo Reynosa on November 25, 2006, he was walking into the heart of enemy territory. Reynosa sat directly across the border from McAllen, Texas, in the undisputed domain of the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas. The concert that night was a success. Thousands of fans sang along to Valentín's hits. He performed his controversial song, A Mis Enemigos, To My Enemies, a defiant track that some interpreted as a message to the Gulf Cartel. Whether this performance sealed his fate or whether the execution was planned regardless, no one knows for certain. What is known is that Los Zetas were watching. 20 minutes after leaving the venue, at approximately 1 a.m., on November 26th, Valentín's black Chevrolet Suburban was ambushed. Gunmen in 2 vehicles unleashed a devastating barrage of automatic weapons fire. The attack lasted only seconds, but left an indelible mark on Mexican music history. When it was over, Valentín Elizalde had been shot 20 times. His manager and his driver were also killed instantly. Investigators recovered 70 bullet cartridges at the scene, evidence of the overwhelming firepower Los Zetas had brought to bear. The execution bore all the hallmarks of a professional cartel hit. The timing, the firepower, the escape. Everything suggested careful planning and military-level execution. Valentín was 27 years old. He left behind a young daughter, Valeria, who has since expressed aspirations to follow in her father's musical footsteps. His former girlfriend, Blanca Vianney Duran Brambilla, would later be killed in Sonora in June 2016, 10 years after Valentín's death. The official investigation produced no arrests. Authorities attributed the killing to Los Zetas, suggesting it was retaliation for Valentín's songs praising their enemies in the Sinaloa Cartel. But no one was ever charged. No one was ever held accountable. The murder remained one more unsolved cartel killing in a country where impunity was the rule, not the exception. What made Valentín's death different was its timing and its context. He was killed just days before he was scheduled to receive a Grammy nomination. That nomination came posthumously on December 6, 2007, when Valentín Elizalde was recognized alongside another murdered singer, Sergio Gomez of Capaz de la Sierra, whose brutal death we will examine next. 2 murder victims, honored together by the Recording Academy, a grim testament to the price of fame in Mexican music. The killing also marked an escalation in cartel tactics, where Chalino's death had been almost intimate. Pulled from a car, shot in the head, Valentín's execution was a military operation. 70 rounds fired in seconds, 3 bodies. A message sent not just to other musicians, but to anyone who might consider aligning with the wrong side in Mexico's drug war. In the years since Valentín's death, his music has only grown in popularity. His songs continue to play on Spanish-language radio stations across North America. His legacy persists, but so does the warning embedded in his murder. In Mexico, singing the wrong song for the wrong audience can get you killed. Do you believe Valentín Elizalde understood the risk he was taking when he performed in Reynosa? Should artists be expected to navigate cartel politics simply to survive? Hit the like button if you think these questions matter. But the horror was only beginning. Make sure you're subscribed for case number 3. A murder so brutal, it shocked even hardened investigators. Number 3, Sergio Gomez. If Valentín Elizalde's death was a military execution, then Sergio Gomez's murder was something far more personal and far more horrifying. The lead singer of Capaz de la Sierra didn't just die. He was kidnapped, tortured for hours, and then strangled. His body bore burns, bruises, and evidence of unimaginable suffering. And unlike Valentín, Sergio Gomez never sang narco-corridos. His biggest hits were love songs. He died not for glorifying cartels, but simply for being famous in a country where fame made you a target. Paulo Sergio Gomez Sanchez was born on June 2, 1973, in Ciudad Hidalgo, Michoacán. Like millions of other Mexicans seeking opportunity, he immigrated to the United States and settled in the Chicago area. In 2003, while working in the city, he founded Que Paz de la Sierra with other Mexican immigrants, creating a band that would become a phenomenon in the Duranguense music scene. The group's style featured ballads played at a sped-up rhythm, distinguished by bass drums and percussion with melodies faster than traditional banda music. Their songs were about love, heartbreak, and hope. Not drugs, not violence, not cartels. By 2007, Que Paz de la Sierra had achieved remarkable success. 5 of their albums had reached the top 10 on Billboard's Latin music chart. Their hit songs, Mi Credo and Volveré, were favorites at weddings and quinceañeras across Mexico and the United States. Sergio lived in Avon, Indiana, just west of Indianapolis, with his wife Jessica Mondolado and their 4 children, Ernesto, Mariela, Janet, and Gabriel. He had traveled the hard road from immigrant worker to international star. He seemed to have achieved the American dream. On December 1st, 2007, Sergio returned to Mexico for a concert at Estadio Morelos in Morelia, the capital of Michoacán. The state had become one of the most dangerous in Mexico, plagued by drug-related violence as cartels fought for control of trafficking routes. Sergio had been warned not to perform there. According to band members, he had received threats before a scheduled show at the same venue in 2006 and had canceled that appearance. This time he decided to go forward. The concert brought together approximately 20,000 fans and featured other renowned artists, including Joan Sebastian. According to friends who spoke to reporters after his death, Sergio seemed uneasy that night. Fellow band member Humberto Duran later told the Houston Chronicle that Sergio had made a strange confession just hours before the attack. He told me, "You know what? I'm not afraid to die. And if I die, it will be happy because I have taken the band to where I want it," Duran recalled. Whether this was a premonition or simply the anxiety of performing in dangerous territory, no one can say. The concert ended late on December 1st. In the early morning hours of December 2nd, Sergio and 2 business associates, Victor Hugo Sanchez and Javier Rivera, promoters from Mexico and the U.S., respectively, left the stadium in a vehicle headed for Puerto Vallarta, where another concert was scheduled. They were intercepted by a convoy of approximately 10 vans filled with armed men. All 3 were abducted at gunpoint. Sanchez and Rivera were released after approximately 2 hours. Sergio was not. For the next several hours, while his family desperately tried to reach him and the music world began to panic, Sergio Gomez was in the hands of his captors. When his body was discovered the next morning, dumped on a highway approximately 10 kilometers from Morelia, the evidence of what he had endured was horrifying. According to forensic reports and media accounts, Sergio had been severely beaten. His chest and abdomen showed massive bruising consistent with repeated blows. His face had been burned with a cigarette lighter. His genitals showed signs of torture by burning. The cause of death was strangulation. He had been choked to death with a cord. The Houston Chronicle quoted investigators saying his genitals were burned, suggesting either interrogation or pure sadism. He was identified by a tattoo of a panther on his left arm. The question that haunted investigators and fans alike was simple. Why? Sergio Gomez did not sing narco-corridos. He had no known connections to drug trafficking organizations. His songs were about love, not violence. "We don't sing narco-corridos," Humberto Duran insisted to reporters. "We have nothing to do with any of those things." Sergio's brother Juan echoed this at the funeral. "We don't know why this happened." Several theories emerged. Some suggested Sergio had been warned not to perform in Morelia because a cartel controlled the region and demanded payment or permission for large events. Others speculated it was a crime of passion. The torture of his genitals suggested personal rage rather than professional retaliation. Still others believed he was simply a victim of opportunity, a famous person in the wrong place at the wrong time, killed because killing him would generate headlines. Whatever the motive, no one was ever arrested. No one was ever charged. The case remains officially unsolved. On December 6, 2007, 3 days after his body was found, Sergio Gomez was nominated posthumously for a Grammy Award, alongside Valentín Elizalde, two murdered Mexican singers, recognized together by the music industry that had failed to protect them. The murders sent shockwaves through Mexico's music industry. Artists canceled tours. Concerts in Michoacán were postponed indefinitely. Pablo Zuac, information coordinator for Bandamax, a cable TV channel specializing in regional Mexican music, described the atmosphere. Very tense, very heavy. People are fearful of what could happen when they cross the street or go to a concert. Sergio Gomez's family eventually brought his remains to Indiana, where he was buried near the community he had called home. His father, Baldomero Gomez, remembered his son's humble beginnings and unstoppable ambition. His fans remembered a man who sang about love and died in agony for reasons no one could explain. This case forces us to confront a terrifying reality. In Mexico, you didn't need to glorify cartels to become their victim. You just needed to be famous enough to make your death newsworthy. Sergio Gomez sang love songs. He raised a family in Indiana. He gave hope to millions of fans. And for that, he was tortured to death in a country that could not protect him. If this story has disturbed you, hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Because the next case proves that not even hospitalized victims were safe from cartel assassins. Number 4, Zayda Peña. This murder occurred the same week as Sergio Gomez's death. December 2007 became known as the bloodiest week in Mexican music history. But Zayda Peña's killing stands apart for one chilling reason. She survived the first attempt on her life. She was shot, rushed to a hospital, underwent successful surgery, and was recovering in her hospital bed when assassins walked into the medical facility and finished the job. The killers entered a hospital, found their target, and executed her at point-blank range. No one stopped them. No one was ever caught. Zayda Peña Arjona was born on March 5, 1981, in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, directly across the Rio Grande from Brownsville, Texas. She became the lead singer of Zayda y los Culpables, Zayda and the Guilty Ones, a grupero band known for romantic cumbias and ballads about love and loss. Her music featured bass, electric guitar, drums, accordions, and synthesizers, with lyrics focused on heartbreak and passion, not violence or drugs. One of her most famous songs was De Contrabando, which would later become a hit for Mexican-American singer Jenny Rivera. Another was Tiro de Gracia, which ironically translates to coup de grace, the term for a final fatal shot. The song was about a failed relationship, not violence, but its title would prove tragically prophetic. Shortly before midnight on November 30th, 2007, some sources report December 1st, Zayda was at the Monaco Motel in Matamoros when an unknown gunman opened fire. She was shot in the back. Two other people present, her friend Ana Bertha Gonzalez and a motel employee named Leonardo Sanchez, were killed instantly. Paramedics rushed Zayda to Alfredo Pumarejo Hospital, where doctors determined that her injuries, while serious, were not life-threatening. She underwent surgery to remove the bullet. The operation was successful. Zayda was placed in recovery, expected to survive. She never got the chance. The next day, while Zayda lay in her hospital bed recuperating from surgery, several assailants entered the hospital. According to reports, they roamed the corridors until they located her room. When they found her, they walked in and shot her again, this time in the chest and face at point-blank range. Some reports indicate she was shot in the heart. Others say bullets struck her back and face. Either way, the shots were fatal. Zayda Peña died in her hospital bed. She was 28 years old. The audacity of the crime stunned even a country growing accustomed to cartel violence. Hospitals were supposed to be safe zones. Patients recovering from surgery were supposed to be protected. But the killers had walked in, found their target, and executed her without interference. No security stopped them. No hospital staff intervened. No one was ever identified or arrested. Police Detective Abel Infante told ABC 13 Houston that no suspects had been identified. Like so many cartel-related murders, the case went cold almost immediately. Theories circulated. Some suggested the killing was related to cartel activity in Matamoros, a city controlled by the Gulf Cartel. Others speculated it might have been a crime of passion. Notably, Zayda's mother worked at a public prosecutor's office, leading some to wonder if the murder was connected to her mother's work rather than Zayda's music career. But the most likely explanation was the simplest. Zayda Peña was famous, and fame made you a target. Her murder, combined with Sergio Gomez's torture killing the same week, sent a message that reverberated through Mexico's music industry. No one was safe, not in their cars, not at concerts, not even in hospital beds surrounded by medical staff. The Tampa Bay Times reported that by December 2007, 13 Mexican musicians had been murdered in just 18 months. 3 in December alone. Jose Angel Medina, leader of the group Patrulla 81, told reporters, "We are in shock because it's a weird thing that in 1 week, 3 members of the Grupo Wave would be killed. We are afraid because we are super exposed. We don't know who's next." Zayda's murder proved something terrifying about cartel operations. They would pursue their targets anywhere. A hospital was not sanctuary. A surgical ward was not protection. If the cartels wanted you dead, they would find you and finish the job. Regardless of witnesses, regardless of location, regardless of the supposed safety of a medical facility. In the years since her death, Zayda's music has continued to circulate. Her albums remain available, her songs still played at parties and gatherings across Mexico and the American Southwest. But her legacy is forever marked by the manner of her death. Surviving one assassination attempt only to be executed in her hospital bed. Defenseless and recovering from surgery, killed by men who were never identified and never brought to justice. If this case proves anything, it's that there was no safe haven for Mexican musicians marked for death. Hit the like button if you believe hospital executions represent a new low in cartel violence. Make sure you're subscribed, because the next case involves not one victim, but 17 members of a single band, executed together in the largest mass murder of musicians in Mexican history. Number 5, Combo, Colombia. This is the case that defies comprehension. Not one victim, not 2, but 17 human beings kidnapped, executed, and dumped in a well in the largest single massacre of musicians in Mexican history. The members of Combo, Colombia did not sing narco corridos. They played Colombian-style vallenato music, romantic ballads about love and heartbreak, performed with accordion, congas, and electric guitars. They were killed not for what they sang, but for where they performed. Their mass execution illustrated a horrifying reality. In cartel territory, simply playing music at the wrong venue could be a death sentence. Combo, Colombia was a popular regional band based in Monterrey, Nuevo León. Their music was vallenato, a Colombian genre that had found a devoted audience in working-class neighborhoods across northern Mexico. The band regularly performed at bars and clubs in downtown Monterrey, entertaining crowds with songs about romance and loss. They appeared on regional television programs, performed on music shows, and had built a loyal following. Most of the musicians were from Colonia Independencia, a Monterrey neighborhood that was also, tragically, a recruiting ground for cartel hit men. On the night of January 25, 2013, Combo, Colombia was hired to perform at a private party at a ranch called La Carreta, the Wagon, in the municipality of Hidalgo, north of Monterrey. Approximately 50 guests were present when, in the early morning hours, around 10 armed gunmen stormed the venue. According to witnesses, the men burst in while the band was playing and ordered everyone to the ground. Then they separated the musicians from the guests. They loaded the 18 band members and crew into waiting vehicles and drove away. The party guests, terrified and compliant, were left behind. For days, the families of Combo, Colombia heard nothing. They filed missing persons reports. They pleaded on television. They organized searches. The horror of not knowing was almost unbearable. Then, on January 27th, an anonymous tip led authorities to an abandoned ranch called Estacas, located at kilometer 92 of the Monterrey-Monclova highway. There, investigators found a well. Inside the well, they found bodies. The recovery took days. 17 corpses were eventually pulled from the depths. 13 musicians, 3 assistants, and 1 sound engineer. Their bodies showed bullet wounds and signs of torture. Their pants had been pulled down to their knees, a tactic used to prevent escape. They had been blindfolded, driven to the remote location, taken out in groups of 3, forced to kneel, and executed with shots to the head. Their bodies were then dumped into the well like garbage. 1 person survived. 1 band member, whose identity has never been publicly revealed, managed to escape. According to the Nuevo León state security spokesman Jorge Domene, this survivor told police he had heard the assailants ask each victim if they belonged to a drug cartel before shooting them. He heard the gunshots. He witnessed his friends and colleagues being murdered one by one. Somehow, he escaped. Accounts differ on exactly how, and made his way to a nearby ranch where a truck driver helped him reach safety. He called his family and reported what had happened. He then led authorities back to the well where his bandmates had been buried. The investigation pointed to Los Zetas, the paramilitary cartel that had once served as enforcers for the Gulf Cartel before splitting off in 2010 and launching a bloody war for territorial control. According to prosecutors, Combo, Colombia had previously performed at venues controlled by Los Zetas. When some of those venues later fell under Gulf Cartel control, the band continued to perform there. Apparently unaware or unconcerned that they were now entertaining their former patrons' mortal enemies. In the world of Mexican cartel politics, this was an unforgivable betrayal. Los Zetas did not care that Combo, Colombia was just a band, that they played romantic music with no cartel content, that they were simply trying to make a living as musicians. The band had played for the wrong side. That was enough. Multiple arrests followed. Edgar Alberto de la Garza Trevino was captured in September 2013 for his involvement in the massacre. Authorities identified Jose Isidro Cruz Villarreal, nicknamed El Pichilo, as the leader who orchestrated the kidnapping. He had reportedly lured the band to the venue with the promise of a legitimate gig. Cruz Villarreal had escaped from Apodaca prison in Monterrey during a riot in February 2012 and was believed to be a Los Zetas Plaza boss in the region. The families of the victims were devastated. Maria Sáenz, mother of one of the murdered musicians, told reporters, "My son was a good boy, a percussionist. He had nothing to do with anything illegal." The Colombian-born keyboardist, Heiner Cuellar, who had Mexican residency, was among the dead. The youngest victims were barely out of their teens. The oldest were in their 40s. None of them had sung about drugs. None of them had chosen sides in the cartel war. They had simply shown up to play a gig and been massacred for it. This case represents the most extreme expression of cartel violence against Mexican musicians. 17 people murdered together, dumped in a well, killed not for their lyrics, but for their perceived allegiances based solely on where they had performed. The message was clear. In cartel territory, even your choice of venue could get you killed. If this mass execution has shaken you, hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Because the pattern of violence continues to the present day, with cases as recent as 2024 and 2025. Number 6. Sergio Vega, El Shaka. This case contains one of the most eerie details in the history of cartel violence against musicians. Just hours before his murder, Sergio Vega gave an interview denying rumors that he had already been killed. He laughed off the reports, reassured his worried mother, and continued on his way to a concert. That night, the rumors became reality. The man who had spent hours insisting he was still alive was gunned down on a Sinaloa highway. It was as if fate, or his killers, had been listening. José Sergio Vega Cuamea was born on September 12, 1969, in Ejido Hornos, Sonora, near Ciudad Obregón, the eighth of 13 children. He immigrated to the United States in 1988 and settled in Phoenix, Arizona, where he formed a group called Los Hermanos Vega with his brothers. The band signed with Joey Records and had several regional hits. In 1994, after a falling out with his siblings, Sergio struck out on his own, eventually renaming his group Sergio Vega y sus Chacas del Norte. Unlike some of the other victims on this list, Sergio Vega was explicitly a narco-corrido singer. His songs celebrated the exploits of drug traffickers and cartel figures. Album titles like El Jefe de Plazas, The Plaza Boss, left no ambiguity about his subject matter. In a genre where lyrics could function as political statements, Sergio's music aligned him with certain factions and made him potential enemies of others. He knew the risks. He had even increased his security in recent years, aware that other musicians were being killed. On June 26, 2010, Sergio was traveling on the Pacific Tour, a series of concerts across western Mexico. He was scheduled to perform at a village festival in Sinaloa, joined by Los New Llaneros and Chuy Rubio. That morning, rumors began circulating online that Sergio had been murdered. The entertainment website La Oreja reached out to him for comment. Sergio gave what would become a haunting final interview. "It's happened to me for years now," he told the website. "Someone tells a radio station or a newspaper I've been killed or suffered an accident. And then I have to call my dear mum, who has heart trouble, to reassure her." He acknowledged the danger of his profession, admitting that he walked with some trepidation through regions controlled by cartels. But he dismissed the death rumors as false and confirmed he was very much alive. He was on his way to his concert. Everything was fine. Everything was not fine. That night, around 9:30 p.m., local time, Sergio was driving his red Cadillac near San Miguel, Sinaloa, having just exited a toll booth. A truck pulled alongside him. Gunmen opened fire. Approximately 30 shots struck the vehicle. Sergio was hit multiple times. According to some reports, after the initial barrage, the assailants approached the crashed Cadillac and fired additional shots at close range into Sergio's head and chest to ensure he was dead. His passenger, Montiel Sergio Avila, was seriously injured but survived. Sergio Vega was 40 years old. He left behind 17 children from various relationships. Fellow singer Jenny Rivera, who would herself die in a 2012 plane crash under suspicious circumstances, posted a tribute on Twitter. He had 17 children. Great singer, Sonoran pride. His manager, Ana Luisa Gomez, wrote, "My best friend is already in heaven. Shaka is with God." The murder was never solved. Authorities made no arrests and identified no suspects. The investigation, like so many others, simply faded away. Some speculated that rival cartels had targeted Sergio for his narco-corrido lyrics. Others suggested he had run afoul of the same organization he celebrated in song. The truth died with him on that Sinaloa highway. What makes Sergio Vega's case particularly haunting is the timing of his death relative to his final interview. Hours, literally hours, separated his dismissal of death rumors from his actual murder. Whether this was coincidence or something more sinister, no one knows. Did his killers hear the interview and decide to prove the rumors true? Were they already planning the attack when he gave his comments? The questions have no answers. Sergio's death also highlighted the impossible position of narco-corrido singers. They made their living celebrating cartel culture. But that celebration could offend rival organizations at any moment. The same lyrics that made them popular with one faction could make them targets of another. There was no way to navigate safely. You could increase your security, limit your travel, avoid certain regions, and still end up dead on a highway, your interview denying your death broadcast while your body cooled. If this case demonstrates anything, it's the futility of precaution in a world where cartels can strike anywhere, anytime. Hit the like button if you believe musicians should be able to perform without fear of execution. Subscribe now, because the violence has continued into the present day, with murders as recent as 2024 and 2025. Number 7. Chuy Montana. This case represents the newest generation of victims, a teenager discovered by social media, signed to a hot label, on the verge of stardom. Jesus Norberto Cárdenas Velázquez, known as Chuy Montana, was just 19 years old when his body was found handcuffed on a highway connecting Rosarito to Tijuana. His rise had been meteoric, plucked from obscurity by one of the biggest names in regional Mexican music. His death was brutal, sudden, and ultimately attributed not to organized crime, but to a personal dispute, though the circumstances remain murky. Chuy Montana's origin story was the stuff of social media legend. In 2023, he was a street performer in Tijuana, walking between vehicles stuck in the long lines to cross the U.S. border at San Isidro. He would sing and play guitar, asking for tips from drivers with nothing to do but wait. One day, a vehicle pulled up containing Jesus Ortiz Paz, the lead singer of Fuerza Regida, one of the most popular bands in the booming Corridos Tumbados movement. Ortiz Paz listened to Chuy perform an original song called Port de Scarface. He was impressed. He offered to sign the young street singer to his record label, Street Mob Records. A TikTok video captured the moment. From there, Chuy's career accelerated rapidly. His single Port de Scarface accumulated over 22 million plays on Spotify. He was featured on Polvos de Chanel from Fuerza Regida's album Palas Bobbies y Beliqueada. With nearly 820,000 monthly Spotify listeners, he was on the cusp of breaking through to mainstream success. He was 19 years old, handsome, talented, and seemingly destined for stardom. On February 7, 2024, at approximately 11:45 a.m., Chuy Montana's body was discovered on the side of the highway connecting Rosarito to Tijuana. His hands were handcuffed together. He had multiple gunshot wounds to his head and arms. Shell casings littered the scene. An orange Renault vehicle was found abandoned nearby. According to some reports, Chuy may have attempted to escape his captors by throwing himself from their vehicle, only to be shot and killed on the roadside. The investigation that followed produced surprising results. On February 21st, Baja California prosecutors announced an arrest. The alleged killer was identified as Kevin Alejandro N., full name withheld per Mexican law, reportedly a friend of Montana. According to state prosecutor Maria Elena Andrade Ramirez, the killing stemmed from a dispute at a party at a Rosarito motel the night before. Chuy had been singing songs that one of his attackers did not like. Despite requests to stop, he continued performing. A fight erupted. The next morning, Chuy was dead. Prosecutors explicitly ruled out organized crime involvement, stating the dispute was over personal issues affecting one of the aggressors, rather than narco-corrido content. However, the circumstances remained controversial. Chuy was closely associated with Fuerza Regida, a band that had received cartel death threats. Just months earlier, both Fuerza Regida and fellow artist Peso Pluma had canceled Tijuana concerts after banners threatening their lives were discovered, signed by CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. The region was a powder keg of cartel tension. Whether Chuy's death was truly unrelated to that world, or whether the personal dispute explanation was a convenient simplification, remains debated. What is certain is the tragedy. A 19-year-old who went from singing for tips at the border to recording with one of Mexico's hottest bands, dead with his hands in handcuffs, shot on a Tijuana highway. His posthumous debut album, No Fue Suerte, was released in June 2025, featuring collaborations with artists who had been his friends. His mother listened to the tracks at Street Mob Records offices, expressing emotions the staff described as overwhelming. Chuy Montana's death, regardless of its ultimate cause, illustrated the dangers facing young artists in the corridos scene. Tijuana had banned narco corridos from public performances. Cartel threats had canceled major concerts. And now a teenage star lay dead. His promising career ended before it truly began. Number 8, Ernesto Barajas. This case is among the most recent on our list, occurring just months ago, in August 2025. Ernesto Barajas was a singer with Enigma Norteño, a popular group with 4 million monthly Spotify listeners known for songs that explicitly celebrated cartel figures. His murder in a Zapopan parking lot demonstrates that the pattern of violence against Mexican musicians continues unabated to the present day. Enigma Norteño's repertoire included songs dedicated to Nemesio Ruben, El Mencho, or Ceguera Cervantes, the leader of CJNG, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of Mexico's most powerful and violent drug trafficking organizations. The U.S. government has offered a $15 million reward for information leading to El Mencho's capture. The band also recorded Los Chapitos, a track honoring the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. These were not subtle tributes. They were explicit celebrations of cartel leadership. According to police reports, on a Tuesday in August 2025, 2 men approached Ernesto Barajas in a parking lot in Zapopan, a suburb of Guadalajara in Jalisco state. They arrived on a motorcycle. They opened fire. Ernesto was killed. Another man died in the attack, and a woman was injured in the leg. The assailants fled the scene. Mexican media reported that Barajas had previously received threats from CJNG, the same cartel his song celebrated. This detail is particularly disturbing. Even singing in praise of a cartel did not guarantee protection. The reasons for the threats, and whether they were connected to his murder, remain unclear. The investigation is ongoing. Ernesto's death came amid heightened tensions between artists and cartels. In the months preceding his murder, multiple Mexican musicians had their U.S. visas revoked by the Trump administration for allegedly glorifying drug violence. Grupo Firme canceled California shows after visa suspensions. Los Alegres del Barranco faced criminal investigations after projecting El Mencho's face during a concert. The relationship between regional Mexican music and cartel culture had become a matter of international controversy. Some regions had taken drastic steps. Tijuana banned narco corridos from public performances, but the bans did not stop the violence. Artists continued to be targeted regardless of their lyrics. Those who glorified cartels, those who criticized them, and those who simply performed love songs in dangerous territory. The pattern established by Chalino Sanchez in 1992 continued unbroken. Mexican musicians died, and no one could guarantee that any precaution would save them. Numbers 9 and 10, Grupo Fugitivo. We conclude this investigation with the most recent mass killing of Mexican musicians. 5 band members kidnapped, murdered, and their bodies found burned near the Texas border in May 2025. This case occurred just months ago, demonstrating that the wave of violence that began with Chalino Sanchez in 1992 shows no signs of ending. If anything, the brutality has intensified. Grupo Fugitivo was a regional Mexican band that performed at parties and local dances in Tamaulipas and across the border region. They were not superstars. They were working musicians, playing the circuit, making a living through their craft. Their members ranged in age from 20 to 40. They were hired to perform at what they believed was a legitimate private event on the evening of Sunday, May 25th, 2025. At approximately 10 p.m., the 5 musicians, Francisco Xavier Vázquez Osorio, Nemesio Antonio Durán Rodríguez, Livan Ediberto Solís de la Rosa, José Francisco Morales Martínez, and Víctor Manuel Garza Cervantes, were traveling in a black GMC SUV toward the venue in Reynosa, just across the border from McAllen, Texas. According to their families, they arrived to find not a party venue, but a vacant lot. It was a trap. Armed men were waiting. The musicians were kidnapped. For the next several days, their families endured agonizing uncertainty. They filed missing persons reports. They received ransom demands. They organized protests, even blocking the international bridge connecting Reynosa and Far, Texas, in a desperate attempt to draw attention to the disappearances. They gathered at a local cathedral to pray. The public outcry was substantial, but it could not bring the musicians back. On May 29, 2025, authorities made a grim discovery. Using surveillance footage, phone records, and tips, investigators located a property believed to be the murder site. There they found the 5 bodies. Local media reported that the victims had been burned, their remains charred almost beyond recognition. The investigation revealed that the men had been questioned about cartel affiliations before being executed. 9 suspects were arrested, identified as members of the Los Metros faction of the Gulf Cartel, which controls Reynosa. According to the Tamaulipas State Attorney General Irving Barrios, the suspects were known cartel operatives. 9 firearms and 2 vehicles were seized during the arrests. In June 2025, additional arrests followed, including the capture of Ulises Raga Ortiz, alias El Fayuca, or Metro 40, believed to be the leader who orchestrated the kidnapping and murders. The victims' families expressed skepticism about the identifications, noting they had not received DNA confirmation and had not been allowed to see the bodies. Whether this was procedural delay or something more troubling, the family's pain was evident. One mother appeared on Facebook Live, crying, "They don't know if it's him. They don't have my DNA. I haven't seen him. They haven't told us anything. And we're the first ones who need to know." The Grupo Fugitivo massacre echoed the Combo, Colombia killings of 2013. Musicians lured to a venue, kidnapped, executed, their bodies disposed of with callous brutality. 12 years separated the 2 cases, yet the methodology was identical. The cartels had learned nothing because they had faced no consequences. Impunity remained the rule. Musicians continued to die. We have traveled through 33 years of violence, from Chalino Sanchez in 1992 to Grupo Fugitivo in 2025. The cases vary in detail, but share a horrifying commonality. Mexican musicians are targeted for death, and nothing seems to stop it. Some victims sang narco corridos glorifying cartel culture. Others performed love songs and had no cartel connections whatsoever. Some were killed by rivals of the organizations they celebrated. Others were killed seemingly at random, victims of territorial disputes or simple bad luck. Some were shot in ambushes. Others were tortured for hours. Some were dumped on roadsides. Others were thrown into wells or burned beyond recognition. The numbers are staggering. By 2013, author Edmundo Perez estimated that approximately 50 narco corrido performers had been killed in the preceding 6 years. The total today is certainly higher, though no comprehensive count exists. The pattern established by Chalino's murder, cartel execution of a regional Mexican musician, has become tragically routine. What has the industry done in response? Concerts have been canceled. Tours have been rerouted. Security has been increased. Tijuana banned narco corridos from public performance. The U.S. has revoked visas of artists accused of glorifying violence. Yet the killings continue. Musicians still perform in dangerous territories. Cartels still consider artists legitimate targets. Bodies still appear on roadsides and in wells. These 10 cases, representing dozens of individual victims, force us to confront uncomfortable questions. Does the music industry bear responsibility for sending artists into dangerous territories? Should streaming platforms that profit from narco corrido content contribute to artists' safety? Is there any realistic way to protect musicians in regions controlled by cartels? Can Mexico's government ever provide the security that artists deserve? The answers so far have been inadequate. The killings continue. The impunity persists. The music plays on, even as the musicians disappear. If this investigation has affected you, hit the like button and share this video with everyone who needs to understand the human cost of Mexico's drug war. Subscribe with notifications enabled. We have a massive new investigation launching next week. The music industry's darkest secrets are only beginning to be revealed. These artists checked into fame believing it would lift them above the violence. Instead, fame made them targets. They never checked out. They remained frozen in the moment of their deaths. Warnings to every young musician who dreams of stardom in a country where that dream can become a death sentence. The investigation is complete. The truth has been documented. Now the question is, what will the world do about it?